104.7 The Cave plays pure classic rock.
104.7 The Cave, Mike the Intern. Good morning. I've got Greg Renoff on the phone, author of a new Van Halen book called Van Halen Rising, How a Southern California Backyard Party Band Saved Heavy Metal. What's going on, Greg?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for calling. I appreciate it, man. So how does one do research on this stuff and I've been looking through the book and the photos and stuff that you've got, and you've got some really cool early photos of this band.
You know, I grew up a huge fan, and I just would read books and articles about Van Halen over the years, and I really felt like I just didn't have the full story, and I thought a lot of other people who were fans wanted to know more about the band. And so I started back in 2009 doing some introductory interviews with a few people, and one of the first guys I talked to was a guy who owned a bar in Los Angeles called the Rock Corporation. And when I spoke to him, he told me that his bar was the bar that had pioneered the wet T-shirt contest in Los Angeles. And so this is 1975, and a wet T-shirt contest had never been done inside a bar before. And the band he had on stage the night the police broke into the club and arrested people for this obscene event was Van Halen. And I thought, you know what, I'm really kind of onto something here. And over the years that followed, I would just try to contact people from Pasadena who grew up around the Van Halens or Roth, and ended up being introduced to a lot of people who had hired them for backyard parties or had done other things to help the band kind of move their way up the ladder in L.A., and it just sort of took off from there. And by the end of the process, I had talked to Ted Templeman, who produced all their records,
Yeah.
of course, Don Landee, who was right alongside him running the board at all those records, Michael Anthony, Pete Angelus, who was David Lee Roth's right-hand man for so many years, and so a lot of the major players involved in it. It just came together really nicely.
That's awesome. And I was talking to this with our afternoon guy, Jay, and it's funny how all these bands, like at the very beginning, are just, they're breadline or less, no money. They're living on their girlfriend's couch. They're borrowing money from their friends. But then when they're become a millionaire, they're like, oh, man, all these people are trying to get my money from me. It's just so funny how that works. You know what I mean? It's like they forget that, at some point they were hired to play in a backyard for $50.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because one of the things that went on with Van Halen, as probably a lot of the listeners know, is that David Lee Roth's father, certainly by the mid-'70s, was a very wealthy man. He owns the mansion in Pasadena that Roth lives in now. If you've ever seen any of the pictures they shot, some of the promo photos, you can see the mansion there. It's just an incredible, it literally is like a gigantic Italian marble and granite mansion. And at the same time, the Van Halen brothers were living in this tiny two-bedroom home with their parents. And so there's this sort of strange dynamic where you have the rich guy in the band by the mid-'70s, Roth, his father's pretty wealthy, and then you have the Van Halen brothers, who really came from very, very humble beginnings. But, the truth of the matter is that all those guys, Roth included, worked their tail off. There was no, Roth's father didn't buy them a record deal or anything like that. Those guys played, the worst dive bars, the worst dumps, and just kept building a following in L.A. And it's like, to me, it was really an inspirational story to write up as well because, I think along the way, if you read the book, there are any number of places they could have quit, especially if you think about the thing that happened with Gene Simmons in 1976 when Gene Simmons brings them to New York City, tries to get them a record deal through Kiss's manager, and Kiss's manager looks at them and goes, I'm not signing you guys. I don't think you guys are good enough. And for those guys to keep going after that, it really was something that inspired me as a person.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get to more with Greg in a few minutes on 104.7 The Cave. 104.7 The Cave, Mike the Intern. Got Greg Renoff on the phone, author of Van Halen Rising, How a Southern California Backyard Party Band Saved Heavy Metal. Greg, you are going to be in town tonight signing books and some merch having to do with this book. Tell me about that.
Yes, I'll be over at the Library Center just south of James River at 7 o'clock, and I'll be out there. I'm going to do a talk about the way that Van Halen made it. And as I said in the previous segment, I really do think that you come out, even if you're not the biggest Van Halen fan, there's a lot to take away from their story for sticking with your vision, fighting your way through obstacles, and not giving up. And I'll do a lot of talking about the dynamics in the band as well. As we all know, famously, David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen didn't always get along. But those guys figured a way to sort of stay a team through the rough years that they had when they started out. And then when it's all done, we'll do a Q&A. I am certainly well-prepared to answer any and all questions about Van Halen, sign some books, and, come out 7 o'clock at the Library Center.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much for taking the time with me this morning, and also thank you for giving us a couple copies of your book to give away. If you want a copy of Van Halen's or Greg's new book about Van Halen, give me a call in the studio, 863-7104. Greg, thank you.
Mike, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for the time.
104.7 The Cave plays pure classic rock.